complement of the season. From the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt, this is ATN International News. First, the headlines. Egypt regional challenges cost $7 billion. At least 69 dies after boat sinks in Morocco. Peru government declares national emergency. Guatemala open to accepting American deportees. Trump appoints Marino as Panama ambassador. Haiti security officer to fill in as health officer. Israeli strikes Houthi targets, killing 6. These are more stories to come your way in a moment. Please stay with us. Events in the Red Sea and regional challenges cost Egypt around $7 billion in revenues from the Suez Canal in 2024, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said on Thursday. Egypt lost more than 60% of the canal's revenue in 2024 compared with 2023, Sisi added in his statement without going into details on the event. Houthi fighters in Yemen have carried out nearly 100 attacks on ships crossing the Red Sea since November in solidarity with Palestinians in Israel's more than year-old war in Gaza. The attacks have forced shipping firms to divert vessels from the Suez Canal to longer routes around Africa, disrupting global trade by delaying deliveries and sending costs higher. Egypt's central bank kept its overnight interest rate unchanged on Thursday as expected, saying that while inflation was said to decelerate sharply in early 2025, it nonetheless remained high. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee kept the lending rate at 85% and the deposit rate at 27.25%, it said in a statement. The unanimous forecast in Reuters' poll of 12 analysts was that the committee would keep rates steady. Egypt's headline inflation dipped in November to 25.5%, its lowest since December 2022, and has been trending downwards from a record high of 38.0% in September 2023. Inflation is projected to ease substantially in 2025 as the cumulative impact of monetary policy tightening and favorable base effect materializes with a notable decline in Q1 of 2025 and converges to single digit by H2 2026, the statement said. It added that according to leading indicators, economic growth accelerated in the second half of 2024 from the 2.4% recorded in the second quarter. The committee judges that the current policy rates remain appropriate to maintain a tight monetary stance until a significant and sustained decline in inflation is achieved and expectations are firmly anchored, the statement said. At least 69 people died, including 25 Malian nationals, after a boat headed for West Africa to Spain capsized off Morocco on December 19th, Malian authorities said. The makeshift boat was carrying around 80 people when it capsized. Only 11 survived. The Ministry of Malians abroad said in a statement on Thursday after collecting information to reconstruct the incident. A crisis unit has been set up to monitor the situation and will report any further updates, it added. The Atlantic migration route from the coast of West Africa to the Canary Islands, typically used by African migrants trying to reach Spain, has seen a surge this year. Years of conflict in the Sahel region that includes Mali, unemployment and the impact of climate change on farming communities are among the reasons why people attempt the crossing. The route, which traces the Atlantic coast of Mauritania and Morocco up to Spain, is one of the world's deadliest. An unprecedented nearly 5,000 migrants died at sea in the last 5 months of 2024 trying to reach the Spanish archipelago, migration rights group Walking Borders said in June. Peru's government on Thursday declared an environmental emergency in a northern coastal area where state oil firm Peru last weekend spilled a crude oil shipment into surrounding waters of the Pacific Ocean. A vessel carrying out pre-shipment maneuvers caused the spill on Saturday at a terminal of Peru's Talara refinery in northern Peru. Peru has not said how much crude was spilled into the sea, but Peru's environmental watchdog, OEFA, said in a preliminary report it has affected some 10,000 square meters of surface seawater, and the Environment Ministry said it has affected at least 7 beaches, as well as local wildlife. Peru's Environment Ministry said the 90 days emergency aims to guarantee the sustainable management of the area and the execution of recovery and remediation works to mitigate environmental contamination. Peru said on Wednesday it had deployed cleanup brigades from the moment of the spill and coordinated with the Fishermen's Union and local authorities so that local economic and tourist activities would continue normally. Guatemala is open to receiving citizens of other American nations who are deported from the United States, 3 sources familiar with the matter said, as the country looks to build a positive relationship with the incoming Trump administration. There has to be a regional response, a Guatemalan official who requested anonymity told reporters, and we want to be part of the solution. The U.S. has struggled to deport nationals from places such as Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Haiti due to strained relations. That could prove a challenge for President-elect Donald Trump, who has vowed to deport record numbers of immigrants living in the United States illegally. His team has already reached out to the governments of several countries to test their willingness to take deportees from third countries. Many U.S. neighbors, including Mexico and Bahamas, have said they do not want to receive deportees from third countries. In 2022, more than 40% of immigrants living in the U.S. illegally came from Mexico, amounting to 4.8 million of 11 million overall, according to a U.S. Department of Homeland Security report. That was followed by Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, which together accounted for over 1/5 of the total. Guatemala has been particularly proactive in preparing for a second Trump term relative to neighbors El Salvador and Honduras meeting with Trump transition team members. Senator Marco Rubio, before he was tapped for Secretary of State, and the Conservative Heritage Foundation think tank about migration and mass deportations, border security, drug trafficking, and China. All 3 countries, along with Nicaraguan governments that has the most openly hostile relationship with the U.S., face a moment of reckoning both in handling Trump's demand they accept deportees and in a potential curtailing of remittances from immigrants in the U.S., which are a major contributor to their economies. Guatemala has been particularly proactive in preparing for a second Trump term relative to neighbors El Salvador and Honduras, meeting with Trump transition members Senator Marco Rubio before he was tapped for Secretary of State, and the Conservative Heritage Foundation think tank about migration and mass deportations, border security, drug trafficking, and China. All 3 countries, along with Nicaraguan governments that has the most openly hostile relationship with the U.S., face a moment of reckoning both in handling Trump's demand they accept deportees and in a potential curtailing of remittances from immigrants in the U.S., which are a major contributor to their economies. The Guatemalan official noted the country already receives 14 deportation flights per week under President Joe Biden and is preparing for an increase. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has picked Miami-Dade County Commissioner Kelvin Moreno Cabrera to serve as ambassador to Panama after having threatened for the U.S. to reassert control over the Panama Canal it handed over 25 years ago. Canada's new Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly will meet aides to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump in Florida on Friday to discuss the risks of imposing new trade tariffs, the Canadian government said. Trump has threatened to impose tariffs on imports from Canada when he takes office in January, unless the country reduces the flow of migrants and fentanyl into the U.S. LeBlanc's office said in a statement on Thursday that the two ministers would highlight the negative impacts that the imposition of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods would have both on Canada and the United States. The office added that Friday's meeting will also focus on Canada's effort to combat fentanyl trafficking and illegal migration. The meeting will take place as Trump continues to belittle embattled Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on social media. On Christmas Day, he referred to the leader of the close U.S. ally as Governor Justin Trudeau of Canada, and again alluded to the country becoming the 51st U.S. state. Trudeau, whose party looks set to lose power early next year, is under increasing pressure from lawmakers in his own party to step down. He flew to Florida in late November to meet with Trump after the Republican first vowed to slap new tariffs on Canada. Haiti on Thursday tapped the nation's security minister to fill in as interim health minister, the official gazette showed, 2 days after armed men fired on a planned hospital reopening event hosted by the previous health minister, leaving 3 people dead. The ministry had called on journalists to attend the event at 8 a.m. local time. The previous minister, Dickinson Lotte Blemer, had still not arrived when the shooting started around 11 a.m. local time. He was installed in his post in November. Chinese workers at a construction site in Brazil for a factory owned by China's electric vehicle producer BYD are victims of human trafficking, Brazilian labor authorities said on Thursday in a growing controversy in BYD's biggest overseas market. BYD and contractor Xinjiang Group have agreed to assist and house the 163 workers in hotels until a deal to end their contract is reached, Brazil's Labor Prosecutor's Office said in a statement after meeting representatives from both firms. The brief statement did not provide details on how prosecutors had reached their conclusion. BYD and Xinjiang did not immediately respond to requests for comment on Friday. Xinjiang rejected the Brazilian authorities' assessment on Monday that the workers at the site in the eastern state of Bahia were operating under slavery-like conditions. Xinjiang said in a social media post reposted by BYD spokesperson that the portrayal of the workers as enslaved was inaccurate and that there were translation misunderstandings. BYD initially said it had cut ties with Xinjiang, but a BYD executive later accused foreign forces and some Chinese media of deliberately smearing Chinese brands and the country and undermining the relationship between China and Brazil. China's foreign minister said on Wednesday its embassy in Brazil was in communication with the Brazilian government to verify and address the situation. The ministry did not immediately respond on Friday to a request for comment on the trafficking claim. The Brazilian prosecutor said they would meet again with the companies on January 7th and propose a deal. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said on Thursday its analysis of samples from the first severe case of bird flu in the country last week showed mutations not seen in samples from an infected backyard flock on the patient's property. The CDC said the patient sample showed mutations in the hemagglutinin HA gene, the part of the virus that plays a key role in attaching to host cells. The health body said the risk to the general public from the outbreak has not changed and remains low. Last week, the United States reported its first severe case of the virus in a Louisiana patient resident above the age of 65 who was suffering from severe respiratory illness. The patient was infected with the D1 genotype of the virus that was recently detected in wild birds and poultry in the United States and not the B13, the 13 genotype detected in dairy cows human cases and some poultry in multiple states. The mutations seen in the patient are rare but have been reported in some cases in other countries and most often during severe infections. One of the mutations was also seen in another severe case from British Columbia, Canada. No transmission from the patient in Louisiana to other persons has been identified, said the CDC. Russia's Federal Security Service said on Thursday it had foiled several plots by Ukrainian intelligence services to kill high-ranking Russian officials and their families in Moscow using bombs disguised as power banks or document folders. On December 17, Ukrainian's SBU intelligence service killed Lieutenant General Krylov, chief of Russia's nuclear, biological and chemical protection troops in Moscow outside his apartment building by detonating a bomb attached to an electric scooter. An SBU source confirmed to reporters that the Ukrainian intelligence agency had been behind the hit. Russia said the killing was a terrorist attack by Ukraine with which it has been at war since February 2022 and vowed revenge. The Federal Security Service of the Russia Federation has prevented a series of assassination attempts on high-ranking military personnel of the Defense Ministry, the FSB said. The FSB, the main successor to the Soviet-era KGB, said that the Russian citizens had been recruited by the Ukrainian intelligence services. One of the men retrieved a bomb disguised as a portable charger in Moscow that was to be attached with magnets to the car of one of the Defense Ministry's top officials, the FSB said. Another Russian man was tasked with recognizing of senior Russian defense officers, he said, with one plot involving the delivery of a bomb disguised as a document folder. An explosive device disguised as a portable charger power bank with magnets attached had to be placed under the official car of one of the senior leaders of the Russian Defense Ministry, it said. The exact date of the planned attack was unclear, though one of the suspects said he had retrieved the bomb on December 23rd, according to the FSB. Finnish authorities on Thursday seized a ship carrying Russian oil in Baltic Sea on suspicion it caused the outage of an undersea power cable connecting Finland and Estonia a day earlier, and it also damaged or broke 4 internet lines. The Cook Islands registered ship, named by authorities as the Eagle S, was boarded by a Finnish Coast Guard crew that took command and sailed the vessel to Finnish waters, a Coast Guard official said at a press conference. The Finnish Customs Service said it had seized the vessel's cargo and that the Eagle S was believed to belong to Russia's so-called shadow fleet of aging tankers that seek to evade sanctions on the sale of Russian oil. 2 fiber optic cables owned by Finnish operators, Elisa linking Finland and Estonia, were broken, while the third link between the two countries, owned by China's CITIC, was damaged. Finnish Transport and Communications Agency, Traficom, said. A 4th internet cable running between Finland and Germany, belonging to the Finnish group Siena, was also believed to have been severed, the agency said. Now, both the Finnish and Estonian governments held extraordinary meetings on Thursday to assess the situation, they said in separate statements. Baltic Sea nations are on high alert for potential acts of sabotage following a string of outages of power cables, telecom links and gas pipelines since 2022, although subsea equipment is also subject to technical malfunction and accidents. The European Union said it strongly condemned any deliberate destruction of the continent's infrastructure. Russia's arms control point man cautioned Donald Trump's incoming administration on Friday that Moscow was considering a whole range of possible steps on nuclear testing due to what it said was Trump's radical position on the issue. The Kommersant newspaper quoted Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov, who oversees arms control, as saying that Trump took a radical position on the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, CTBT, during his first term. The international situation is extremely difficult at the moment. The American policy in its various aspects is extremely hostile to us today, Rakabov was quoted as saying. So the optionality of our actions in the interest of ensuring security and the complex of possible measures and actions to realize this and to send politically appropriate signals in addition to what practitioners are considering does not contain any exceptions. During Trump's first 2017 to 2021 term as president, his administration discussed whether or not to conduct the first U.S. nuclear test since 1992, the Washington Post reported in 2020. Post-Soviet Russia has not carried out a nuclear test. The Soviet Union last tested in 1990. President Vladimir Putin has said that Russia would consider testing a nuclear weapon if the United States did. Since the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, only a few countries have tested nuclear weapons. According to the Arms Control Association, the United States last tested in 1992, China and France in 1996, India and Pakistan in 1998, and North Korea in 2017. Pakistani military court sentenced 60 civilians to jail time ranging from 2 to 10 years in connection with attacks on military facilities following the arrest of former Prime Minister Imran Khan in 2023, the military's media wing said on Thursday. The sentence includes a relative of Khan as well as 2 retired military officers. Days earlier, 25 others were sentenced on the same charges. Khan's arrest in May 2023 sparked countrywide protests that saw his supporters attack and ransack military installations in an unprecedented backlash against Pakistan's powerful army generals. The military's media wing said the nation, government and the armed forces remain steadfast in their commitment to uphold justice and ensuring that the notable writ of state is maintained. The sentences have sparked concerns amongst Khan's supporters that military courts will play a more significant role in cases related to the former leader, who is facing multiple charges, including inciting attacks against the armed forces. The military's media wing said the nation, government and the armed forces remain steadfast in their commitment to upholding justice and ensuring that the inviolable right of the state is maintained. The sentences have sparked concerns among Khan's supporters that military courts will play a more significant role in cases related to the former leader, who is facing multiple charges, including inciting attacks against the armed forces. The European Union also criticized the sentences, saying they are inconsistent with the obligations that Pakistan has undertaken under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. In a press conference on Wednesday, the information minister said the military court's sentences do not infringe upon the right to a fair trial, as individuals are granted access to a lawyer, family, and still have the opportunity to appeal twice, both within the military court and civilian court, the relevant high court. Khan supporters have denied any wrongdoing, and Khan himself claims that the cases against him are politically motivated. The military and government have denied any unfair treatment of Khan or his supporters. Chinese President Xi Jinping on Thursday sent condolences to the president of Azerbaijan, Russia and Kazakhstan for the casualties caused by the Azerbaijan airline plane crash, China's state broadcast CCTV reported. The plane, an Embraer passenger jet, crashed near the city of Akatwa in Kazakhstan on Wednesday, killing at least 38 people after diverting from an area of Russia that Moscow has recently defended against Ukrainian drone attacks. Xi expressed condolences to the families and their victims and wished the injured a speedy recovery, CCTV reported. China's foreign ministry on Thursday urged the Philippines to return to peaceful development, saying Manila's decision to deploy a U.S. medium-range missile system in military exercises would only bring the risk of an arms race in the region. The U.S. Typhoon system, which can be equipped with cruise missiles capable of sinking Chinese targets, was brought in for joint exercises earlier this year. China's foreign ministry on Thursday urged the Philippines to return to peaceful development, saying Manila's decision to deploy a U.S. medium-range missile system in military exercises will only bring the risk of an arms race in the region. The U.S. Typhoon system, which can be equipped with cruise missile capable of striking Chinese targets, was brought in for joint exercises earlier this year. On Tuesday, Philippine Defense Minister Gilberto Teodoro said the Typhoon's development for joint exercises was legitimate, legal, and beyond reproach. Army Chief Roy Galido said on Monday that the Philippines was also planning to acquire its own mid-range missile system. Rivalry between China and the Philippines has grown in recent years over their competing claims in the South China Sea. Longtime treaty allies Manila and Washington have also deepened military ties, further ratcheting up tensions. Now, South Korea's parliament began a session on Friday where it votes to impeach acting President Han Duck-seo over short-lived marital law is scheduled, as the Constitutional Court said it would swiftly decide suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol's fate. The push to impeach Prime Minister Han Duck-seo, which has been acting president since Yoon was impeached on December 14th for declaring marital law on December 3rd, has thrown South Korea's once vibrant democratic success story into uncharted territory. Ahead of the parliamentary session, opposition leader Lee Jae-myung said his Democratic Party, which has majority control of parliament, will go ahead with a plan to impeach the acting president, accusing Han of acting for insurrection. There has been overwhelming public support for Yoon's removal, according to opinion polls conducted after his marital law attempt. The plan for a vote to impeach Han was unveiled on Thursday by the opposition party, Democratic Party, after he declined to immediately appoint 3 justices to fill vacancies at the Constitutional Court, saying it would exceed his acting role. It remained unclear how many votes are needed to impeach Han as acting leader. The threshold for a prime minister is a simple majority, while a 2/3 majority is needed for a president. It is also unclear whether Han and the ruling party would accept any outcome. If Han is suspended, Finance Minister Choi Sung-mok will assume the acting presidency by law. The vote to determine Han's fate comes on the same day the Constitutional Court held its first hearing in a case reviewing whether to overturn the impeachment and reinstate Yoon or remove him permanently from office. It has 180 days to reach a decision. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's cabinet on Friday approved a record $730 billion budget for the next fiscal year, while limiting new bond issuance to the lowest in 17 years on the back of record tax revenue. However, Ishiba's minority government faces a tough political battle with opposition parties to pass the budget through parliament early next year, potentially damaging his already weak standing in the polls. The budget for the fiscal year that starts in April is estimated at 115.5 trillion yen, which equals 732.36 billion naira, up 2.6% from the current year's 112.6 trillion yen, driven by debt servicing and social security costs. But tax record revenue is likely to help reduce new bond issuance to 28.6 trillion yen, the lowest since 2008. As a result, the debt dependence ratio will stand at 24.8%, meaning new bond sales account for a quarter of the budget. It represents the first drop between 30% since 1998. As a budget plan needs support from opposition parties to pass parliament, Ishiba's minority government could be forced to yield to their commands and revise part of the plan during parliament deliberations. The key opposition Democratic Party for the People, DPP, is demanding a more aggressive lifting of the income tax threshold in effective tax cuts, potentially hurting tax revenue. Core inflation in Japan's capital accelerated in December, while services inflation held steady, data showed on Friday, keeping alive market expectations for a near-term interest rate hike. Factory output, however, fell in November for the first time in 3 months, suggesting that softening overseas demand was taking a toll on the export-reliant economy. The data will be among factors the Bank of Japan (BOJ) would scrutinize at its next policy meeting on January 23rd to 24th, when some analysts expect it to hike short-term interest rates. The Tokyo Core Consumer Price Index (CPI), which excludes volatile fresh food costs, rose 2.4% in December from a year earlier, compared with a median market forecast for a 2.5% gain. It followed a 2.2% year-on-year rise in November. Another index that strips away both fresh food and fuel costs, which is closely watched by the BOJ as a better gauge of demand-driven inflation, rose 1.8% in December from a year earlier after increasing 1.9% in November, the data showed. The BOJ ended negative interest rate in March and raised its short-term policy rate to 0.25% in July on the view Japan was making steady progress on meeting its inflation goal. The BOJ has held rates steady since then, including at least week's meeting. Governor Kazuo Udema said he preferred to wait for more data to gauge next year's wage momentum and for clarity on the incoming U.S. administration's policy before hiking again. Israel struck multiple targets linked to the Iran-aligned Houthi movement in Yemen on Thursday, including Sana'a International Airport, and Houthi media said at least 6 people were killed. The head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said he was about to board a plane at the airport when it came under attack. A crew member on the plane was injured, he said. The Israeli military said that in addition to striking the airport, it also hit military infrastructure at the ports of Hodeidah, Salif, and Ras Katibi on Yemen's west coast. It also attacked the country's Hejaz and Ras Katib power stations. The Houthi-controlled Siba news agency said the 3 people were killed in the strike on the airport and 3 were killed in Hodeidah, while 40 others were wounded in the attacks. Later on Thursday, the Houthis said they were ready to respond quickly to the attack amid escalation, Houthi-run Al Mashira TV reported. Houthis have repeatedly fired drones and missiles towards Israel in what they describe as acts of solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in an interview with Channel 14 that Israel was only at the beginning of its campaign against the Houthis. We are just getting started with them, he said. The Prime Minister has been strengthened at home by the Israeli military's campaign against Iran-backed Hezbollah forces in southern Lebanon and by its destruction of most of the Syrian army's strategic weapons. As we are about to board our flight from Sana'a, the airport came under aerial bombardment. One of our plane's crew members was injured, he said in a statement. The air traffic control tower, the departure lounge, just a few meters from where we were, and the runway were damaged, he said, adding that he and his colleagues were safe. The UN Security Council is due to meet on Monday over the Houthi attacks against Israel, Israel's UN ambassador Danin Danon said on Wednesday. On Saturday, Israel's military failed to intercept a missile from Yemen that fell into the Tel Aviv-Jaffa area, injuring 14 people. Gaza authorities said an Israeli airstrike killed 5 Palestinian journalists in a vehicle outside a hospital on Thursday, but the Israeli army said the victims were Islamic Jihad militants posing as media workers. Medics said the 5 were among at least 31 people killed in Israeli air assault across the Palestinian enclave before dawn, as Hamas and Israel traded blame over delays in reaching a ceasefire deal more than 14 months of fighting. The Palestinian Journalists Union said one strike killed 5 journalists from the Al-Quds Today channel who were in a broadcast vehicle in front of Al-Wada Hospital in the Al-Nusrat refugee camp in central Gaza. The union said more than 190 Palestinian journalists have been killed by Israeli fire since the war began in October of 2023. The Gaza-based channel called the strike a massacre and said in a statement on Telegram, the 5 were killed as they carried out their media and humanitarian duty. It has regularly featured Islamic Jihad leaders and provided day-to-day coverage of the war in Gaza. The Iranian-backed Islamic Jihad group, an ally of Hamas, fought several rounds against Israel in the past 2 decades, and fighters of the group have joined the fighting against Israel since October 2023. It said it has hostages in its custody too. The group condemned Israeli's killing of the 5 men in a statement, but it did not claim any of them as a member. Later on Thursday, health officials said 5 medical staff, including a pediatrician, were killed by Israeli fire at Kamla Adwan Hospital in Beit Lahia in the northern edge of Gaza Strip, while Israeli forces have operated since October. China has sanctioned several military industrial companies and related senior executives over U.S. arms assistance and sales to Taiwan, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said on Friday. Boeing subsidiary Institute Inc., RX Inc.'s Raytheon's Canada and Raytheon's Australia, as well as Hudson Technologies Co., are among the companies listed by the ministry in a statement. The U.S. recently approved $571.3 million in defense support for Taiwan after giving the go-ahead to arms sales worth an estimate $385 million. China claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and has never renounced the use of force to bring the island under its control. Taiwan strongly objects to China's sovereignty claims and says only the island's people can decide their future. The U.S. is bound by law to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself despite the lack of formal diplomatic ties between Washington and Taipei. The sanctions will freeze the companies and executives' assets in China and ban organizations and individuals in China from trading or collaborating with them, the ministry said. The U.S. move seriously undermines China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, a ministry spokesperson said in a regular press brief on Friday. China urges the U.S. to abide by the One China principle and stop arming Taiwan, the spokesperson Mao Ning said, adding that Beijing will take all necessary measures to safeguard its security and interests. And that's the size of the international news for today. Thank you so much for staying with us. I am Otaria Benjamin. Thank you for watching. Please stay with us. You can follow us on all our social media platforms. On X, formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Network. On Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network. On Instagram, Atlantic TV Network 1. Watch us live on our website, www.atlanticnetwork.tv. Remember, peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Coming up next is business news. Please stay with us.
From life across the ocean to the land